They left it to us. It was a time on this planet where you could actually manifest anything you want based on a set of algorithms and electrical signals linking you to something similar to a genie. See, back in the day, there was something called an ATM, and it was called a genie. That's what they used to call it back in the day. This is where you would go get money out of the ATM machine. It was like a genie. And a genie is actually going back into what's called a jinn, because there was a time on this planet where all beings were what you call unisex. It's really, they were electrical. If you've ever played an old game called Street Fighter, you can go check it out in Google. It's called Street Fighter. If you haven't heard of it, there's a being on there called Raiden, one of the fighters. And Raiden, his or her power was based on electricity. I say that, and you'll see why in a minute. His or her. Raiden's power was based on electricity. Because there was a time in this planet where you were electrical based. This is why they call it currency, because there was a time on this planet where money was always exchanged. This is where I'm about to get at. And if you could tap into this grid, there's a genie on this planet. It'll give you anything you want, any amount of money that you want. However, you have to understand how it works. So there was a time we were all electrical beings. This is when we were on the fifth dimension. And then these electrical beings monitored the earth. There's a monitoring system on the earth, a way to watch the earth from other planets. And these electrical beings mainly done and performed all of this from Jupiter. And they would watch and survey the planet. This is what the Pleiadians called it, a survey. And they would survey the planet until one day they discovered what you would call an androgynous being or asexual being, but this being had a dick or a phallus or a penis, whichever one you want to use. I say that so that many minds can understand what I'm saying, because some people, they don't know what one of those terms could mean, whether it's the dick, the phallus, or the penis. There's people out there that don't know what a phallus is. There's people that don't know what a dick is. So I have to be clear and say that this is the penis, but these were androgynous beings, meaning that, yeah, they had that, but these were not the same type of beings that many people know as males today. I'm going to go into that why in a second. So they was just about getting money, these electrical beings, and trying to manifest as much as they can on this planet. Until some of them, but in doing this as electrical beings, there were times where they had to learn how to shapeshift and to slow down their vibration to become a being, to experience life on what's called the fourth dimension, or the fourth dimension, which is the dimension that this androgynous being, or what you may call a male, but it was actually an androgynous because of the fact that this being was, when it was born, before this experiment I'm about to explain to you, before this being was born, it was already programmed in this being that it had the organs to be sexual, but the sexuality aspect of an androgynous being has to be activated a certain kind of way. So when they're first born, the sexual aspect of an androgynous being is not active until contact takes place. So there was a time when the electrical beings, or what you would call unisex people, had contact with androgynous beings or males that, once activated sexually, begin to perform like, more like what you would call masculine males today. But over time, these males became what you would call your pygmies, or more of males that function from the mind of what today most people know as nerds. See, this stock of male came from an androgynous being, a mental being. And then you have, over time, this is important, understanding how to manifest, because all of these types of beings became deities that govern different aspects of this world. And we'll have to go more into that, in private lessons, and those people that are interested over time. I'm going to offer private lessons to the public, but I'm not ready for that yet. But we can go more into that in a question and answer session or something like that. But just shoot me a question or answer when you make a donation on PayPal, 13signsastrology@gmail.com. Just leave any type of donation and leave a question. That's what most people have been doing on the donation, or a statement or something about that you want me to talk about. And I'll go ahead and finish out whatever you don't understand from any video. Just want to kind of throw that out. So they had contact eventually and activated these androgynous beings. And you got to remember, though, they still had their powers to survey and see parts of this planet that even the androgynous being couldn't see. And these unisex beings, over time, from interacting with the androgynous beings, see, before they could take on male or female energy, but once they begin to interact more with the androgynous beings, they begin to take on more of feminine-based energy, because they were really feminine-based from the beginning. The electrical being comes from a feminine-based energy and moves into a masculine energy. You would have to understand the constellation of Cancer and the yin and the yang to get more into that. So they come from a feminine-based energy, but can move into a masculine-based energy. But they're always going to be feminine-based, meaning they're more so made. These electrical beings are like your housewives and your really good women that are really good natured women that, not to say there's good and bad, but I'm saying, like, as far as on a marriage level, this is what you would consider a good wife. I mean, you guys know what I mean. A wife that does her, roles, and it's not tricking people and, cheating and all that type of stuff. So we'll go into that why in a minute. This is all science. Once you understand science, you'll understand that there's no feelings. People do what they do because they're programmed. Once you understand that, I can teach you how to get over your feelings. It takes a lot of time, it takes years. We'll talk about that more at another time. But so then they eventually, they were feminine based though. Once they begin to interact with these androgynous beings, or these males that had dicks and stuff, started having sex. Of course, whether it was through mental sex and dreaming about it, they may not necessarily interacted with them, but they were, just horny. They wanted to have sex. So some of them did, some of them didn't, but the ones that did created another experiment, because over time, sex creates what? Lust. So this takes you to the last degree of it, or the last type of being that you have to understand to manifest your abundance. And this type of being, females were attracted to. They began to leave the androgynous beings because they saw what you would call your Anunnaki types, tall males. See, androgynous beings only make it to a certain height. I say males loosely because you're going to find out that these electrical beings found out something different. We'll talk about that more in a minute. But these were your tall males with big muscles, 6 and 7 feet tall, with supposedly long phalluses. Stronger beings, and these electrical beings began to find these tall and survey, and they found out, whoa, look at that type of thing. You know what I'm saying? So they moved out of wanting to mess with the androgynous beings and began to want to mix with the tall beings, not knowing their nature. And that these tall beings actually went through an experiment process. Very key here, because this is where it gets deeper. We'll talk more about it, like I said, in the future. But they went through an experiment or a cloning process, these tall beings. They started out as tall females that took on the male body over time The females, man, that they took on the phallus or the dick and began to use it on other females, that they were tall, that they were inside, female, feminine based. Very interesting. See, the androgynous beings I spoke of earlier, they were androgynous, but they were inside. Once they're activated, they become more masculine based, but more of the husband type masculine base of the, the typical husband of the man of the house, bring home the money, take care of your wife type of scenario. This was the androgynous type being or whatever, whether it was even polygamous or not, doesn't really matter. They were just, good males, basically. Like, not to say there's good and bad, but just a good husband. You guys, women, know what I'm talking about. And not to say that these taller men weren't good husbands either, but these taller men started out, they came from a tribe of what you would call hermaphrodites. Women in nature, but appearing to be real strong males, some of them even. And that's what women are attracted physically, though. Not necessarily internally, but physically. Very important. So they began to move, wanted to intermix with them, but once they found out, they started murdering them, and they were violent. This was a violent stop because these women came from, these tribe came from a feminine-based tribe. So what I'm explaining here is that they didn't know this, but these were feminine-based men that looked very masculine, very strong, much more stronger than the androgynous beings. So they moved in and began to marry them and begin to slow down their vibration really bad, to where eventually it got to the point where they never made it to what's called unlimited progress. See, the electrical being or the unisex being came here to manifest. It's a good way of putting it. They came here to manifest, but in doing that, there's certain rules when you talk about manifesting that you have to follow. And this is what we're getting into in this program. Living the life as a manifester for real. Because at some point, there's going to come a time where you won't be able to manifest without this. Because this story that I'm telling you is happening now. And you won't survive because what's going to eventually, see, astrology depicts sex, right? And what's going to eventually happen is that this planet goes through this light, it goes through intercourse. And it begins to change. You're going to begin to see new types of beings, shapeshifters, shadow beings that can move and change their frequency. It's all kind of stuff on this planet. But in manifesting, and I keep bringing that up, you can move through all of the grotesque, negative, horrific images on this planet if you know what's going on, so that you could move into what's called unlimited progress, because we haven't seen it. That's how I started out talking about on this. That's how I started talking on this video, and I'll end it like this. We never made it to the portal because many of us got caught up into what's called our lower self. Not from a religious standpoint. You never saw the abundance. I'm going to tell you on a different level. The preacher ain't going to say this. You never saw the type of money, and even myself, all of us, because you never got horny enough. Because every time you got horny, you went and fucked or jacked off or did something like that, and you wasted your energy. Not to say it's anything wrong, because you could do that and increase your energy too, but it's through a process. Most people aren't. If you're really a sexual ritual, like, you're going to spend a whole day having sex, like. And once that ritual ends, you don't do it again with that person. At least not for a period of time. And it's going to be much longer than 2 or 3 or 4 weeks or even 4 months. You ain't ready for that. You might not do it again with that person for another 5 years. Because the energy, you're going through a ritual. With your kundalini, you're updating your being so that you can learn how to manifest more money and more abundance on this planet. You're like, well, what does money have to do with all this? You have to exist. All of this costs. They don't tell you the rates of spiritual or not just services, like readings. I'm talking about you increasing, building up your kundalini is going to cost you some money. It's not free. It's going to cost you money. Some kind of way, because there's stuff you got to do. Even if you have the tools to do it, it's going to cost you money or energy. Money is just energy. You're going to have to exchange something. Everything on this planet requires an exchange or sex. And sex is the lower version of it because, again, it was, so they blocked us from the portal, it was all about unlimited progress. And then eventually in the end, you could come out of that with your soul group. Unlimited sex with your soul group and move into a different version of this planet. We never saw the highest versions of this planet. This planet is a program, and we never saw the highest versions because we never even made it to the top level of this planet, meaning that there's a certain amount of time you're supposed to be able to live on this planet in a certain way, and we never saw that. So I'll go more into more of this type of talk in the future. You guys have a good day. As always, this is what we do on the channel, 13astrology.com. Hotep.